So I want to start with a saying that one of the fellow IWLA members departed on me, probably our second or third meeting with them as they were looking at the one track solution. And I promise this isn't going to be a commercial for one track. We're going to talk about safety prevention and how do we use technology? How do you all use technology to enable your team to perform safer in their daily activities? But Ryan Donovan from States, they're a customer of One Track, but he said to me, and it stuck with me because we use this saying so often. It's you all want your people to go home in the same condition they came to work in, right? I see heads nodding, right? But he took it one step further, right? He said that he wants all of his people to go home from work in the same condition that they arrived in, only happier because they're going home, right? So I think it's very fitting for the topic that we're going to cover today because we understand how devastating one single accident can be, right? It's an incredibly important topic, and it's something that we don't take lightly, right? There's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of technology here represented at the with the tabletops that are all with the focus of helping everybody to improve safety. So, show of hands, how many of your companies say that safety is their number one priority? All right, that's pretty good, right? All businesses want to make money, but safety remains the top priority for almost all of the members of IWLA and all of our other customers, all 3PLs, shippers, manufacturers. They want everybody to be as safe as possible. So when you're thinking about your operations, what stands out? What are the top three safety concerns that you have around your equipment, your different activities that your operators are performing today? Go ahead and shout them out. Anything stand out as things that you lose sleep over at night? Driver safety. I'm sorry. Hazardous chemical storage, capacity restraint, dropping a 1,000 pound roll. That could be problematic, right? Losing a forklift off the dock. We've seen that. It's terrifying, right? Heat conditions, right? Humidity levels, right? Because humidity rises, those boxes become weaker and it can cause falls, right? And I was talking to somebody at lunch today. They said they've had 3 or 4 incidents in the past handful of months where their operators are moving around their facility and bump something, and it's like a domino effect, right? And you're just praying somebody doesn't end up in the wrong place at the wrong time to where you're having to call loved ones, right? So again, we take this very seriously. And as we think about the 3 roadblocks to a safer warehouse, right? It really starts with the ability to have your operators have accountability, right? Unlike they've ever had before. Because how often are you walking your aisleways and you're seeing bumps and scratches and dents, and you have that brand new fleet of forklifts, and at the end of the week, it's looks like it's been through the Indy 500, right? The reality of it is accidents happen. We recognize that. But how can we empower all of you? How can technology empower all of you to make better decisions, measure things that can't be measured today, and then give your operators, your supervisors, the ability to make decisions on that information that we're capturing? Being able to manage cell phones. Every one of our customers, without a doubt, says, "Hey, we don't have any cell phones in our building. We have zero cell phone policy." After the first week, you see hundreds of cell phones, right? So how do you manage that, right? So first you have to manage it or measure it, and then you can manage it, right? And so being able to understand how often are cell phones being utilized and then actually implement a solution or process or policy to act on those things that we're seeing. And then finally, that limited visibility when a safety event occurs. How often are you spending hours and hours maybe combing through security camera footage or taking statements from operators where the evidence on the floor doesn't match up to what you're hearing, but that's what you got, right? That's all the information that you have to go on. And it's something that, okay, this could cost somebody their job. This could cost somebody, from a severe accident perspective, an injury perspective, could cost a whole lot more than just a job, right? So how do you use technology to drive better, safer processes within your warehouse today? And so We're gonna focus on 5 steps to help you achieve a safer warehouse, right? And so it all starts with getting visibility. There's a number of computer vision companies out here, right? We're all talking about the same thing about, hey, we can show you exactly what happened. And that is incredibly important for your operations today. Being able to see what caused an accident, when did it happen, what were those leading indicators that actually caused the event to occur. Increasing accountability for better coaching, focusing on those leading indicators that I talked about. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at those today. Digitizing your pre-flight inspection process. We can't tell you, that seems, I fought with our marketing team on this because I was like, I don't know, guys, I think we might be overstating how does this prevent injuries? And then you go back and you listen to and you talk to our customers. And if they're not performing those safety inspections and OSHA comes knocking, right? I think Mike said, there's no door that is off limits, right? If they come knocking, they're looking for this data, having it and being able to go back and actually validate those inspections were completed and all of your equipment was functioning safely, hugely beneficial to you from a safety perspective. And then taking the time to actually analyze all that data, have it live in a place where you can generate reports. All of these things can be automated into a sequence so that if X is achieved, then you'll get Y report, right? And it's all in an effort of, let's use the technology that's available today and empower your team to make better decisions. We've had another one of our customers talked about OneTrack as a superpower for supervisors, right? So you can actually they can see exactly what took place out there. So visibility, right? We started out with this. How often have you come in after? Yeah, I know it's bad. How often have you showed up to your facility in the morning and seen something like this? And then that text message chain occurs. I don't know. What do you mean there's a fork through a pillar? Anybody hurt? Anybody report it? Probably not, right? So what you're seeing when you have technology where you can actually go back and understand who was involved, when did it occur, most importantly, why it occurs, it fundamentally gives your supervisors the ability to start shifting the culture, right? Safety is a culture in an operation today. And we hear often from people that are out in the industry, not even one-track customers, but how do we change the culture? How do we change the behavior of our supervisors so that they can have more effective discussions with the operators that fall under them during their shift, and giving them the visibility that they need to have those discussions, to coach on that very nuanced behavior that occurs, ultimately helps to shift and change that behavior. So world-class operations, it requires vision, right? And this is not about OneTrack per se, but you need a solution out there. There's technology out there that will provide that 24/7 monitoring. Become your eyes on the floor all the time. Provide your team with instant alerts, not days or weeks after something occurs or after you walk in the aisleways and see that dent in your racking, but immediately when it happens. Those discussions fundamentally change because you can actually say, hey, I know that you just bumped into this rack, which caused a little damage. It changes when you can have that discussion right away versus 2 weeks from now, right? I don't even remember what I had for lunch today. So being able to coach on behaviors like that fundamentally change the game for our customers and for customers that are using technology. Continuous improvement. You might realize, we don't actually have a safety issue. We have a process issue. And I think we were talking at lunch today. When you begin to improve process, you begin to improve quality, safety comes right along with it, right? So a rising tide lifts all ships. Let's fix it all. Let's help with technology. Let's make your operations better, more productive, safer, improve the quality. And you're going to see as we move through the presentation, what visibility can deliver to you from a customer perspective. And we have any Steves out here in the audience? I apologize ahead of time. Steve just happens to be this fellow that we created. Also AI generated. It's not scary, I promise. Just AI generated Steve. So we tell this story. Every warehouse has at least one Steve, right? And Steve wants to do his best. He really does. But there's nothing in place to help him from a process perspective, Maybe he's unclear on that cell phone policy that you talked about. He had to sign that paper at the beginning of his employment. It's no big deal. It's just a cell phone, right? So here's Steve and your no cell phone policy. Oh, Steve. Pretty important discussion he's having there. But here's the reality. That's terrifying because you're moving around a facility with 7, 8, 10,000 pound pieces of equipment, and he's distracted. Those distractions can be the difference between severe injury or, hey, you're going home in the same condition that you showed up today in, only happier. So being able to deliver that visibility to your supervisors, say, hey, we need to talk to Steve because we have a no cell phone policy in place. We've never been able to hold anybody accountable to it. It's not his fault, right? We need to talk to him. We need to coach him. And then if he chooses to not abide by the policy, then we have different discussions coming down the line. But the reality of it is, all of our customers say, hey, we have a no cell phone policy. It's the hardest one for us to enforce because when they leave the parking lot today, what are they doing? How many have a no cell phone policy? Just out of curiosity, hands. Yeah, okay, right. So it's incredibly common, but it's so difficult to coach on. And there's technology out there that you can actually use to help monitor those types of behaviors. Oh, Steve. Steve's moving product now. Oh, visibility, right? What behaviors did he engage in that led to that pallet collapsing, right? Pallet stacked correctly, everything's good. What we end up finding in this is there was no shrink wrap on that. You look at this piece fall down, I don't think there's any shrink wrap that comes after it. So it's a process problem. It's not a person problem. You got to be hard on the process and easy on the people. And using technology that's available today allows you to do that. Oh, we're back to our forklift. So you come into the facility, right? We already talked about this. Oh boy, we got a problem. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? What you realize is, well, maybe it's just this person's first accident. Maybe that, maybe we don't have such a big issue. But then when you dive into your safety tool, you realize, oh boy, we got a bigger problem because this is Steve's 23rd accident, right? And it just happens to be the one that really causes some serious damage, right? So being able to see what's going on. So the bottom line, right, with everything that we're showing you here today is you can't solve the problems you can't see, and neither can your team, right? So whether it's on a piece of equipment or whether it's a case pick operation where they're having to move boxes from one side to the other, you need to have technology in place that can empower your team to have safety discussions that fundamentally change the behavior of your operators. And what we see when you begin to have those discussions, and some of our companies even use these as, a guiding principle, right? So they'll come in just like a quarterback, right? They come off the field, the first thing they do, they grab their tablet and they review what just took place that 4 downs before. How can we get better? And many of our customers use this tool very similar to, hey, let's review what took place. Let's coach our operators on what they did wrong so that ultimately it changes the behavior, changes the culture of safety within your operations, because now you can have discussions that are meaningful. So it's real-time learning, it's real-time coaching, right? And so we talk about coaching policies here because this is an incredibly important aspect of our system, but any technology, right? As you think about most of the businesses in here are not just a single site. You have a network, right? So how do you ensure that site 1 and site 3 and site 5 and site 10, how do you ensure that they coach those similar type accidents all the same way, right? And it's being able to build a process around your policy, right? So when something occurs, you can now actually say, impact on forklift accident. Here's what you should be coaching your operators on. Here's the discussion that you need to be having to ensure every single supervisor is coaching your operators the same way. Consistency across the network, again, helps to raise that water level, right? All of that changes the behavior, changes the overall culture of safety for an organization. It gives you the ability to digitally capture all of the information that you need, right? So every one of you probably has a safety process that your team is required to follow. Maybe it's handwritten, maybe you use iPads, maybe you're filling out a Google sheet with, 10 questions, right? Whatever it is, it has to be able to be accessed. And then how do you use that data? Collecting it all is great, but how do you use it to make changes, right? You have to be able to access, you have to understand, hey, these are the behaviors that my team is fully engaged in or often engaged in. Maybe they're not looking in the direction of travel. Maybe they got their cell phone out. Maybe it's hands outside the equipment, one that always terrifies me. You see that and you're thinking, oh, that could end very badly, right? So giving context to your supervisors for coaching. So often do we hear from our customers, they say, well, I actually was able to coach on 6 additional things in this video outside of just the moment of impact, right? So maybe it's, hey, they're wearing their hoodie or they have Bluetooth uh, earbuds in, AirPods, right? All of these things affect safety within your building. And it ultimately affects the culture because how often do you have somebody, an operator say, well, he's got his AirPods in, I'm going to do it too. Or he's got his JBL speaker playing, I'm going to do it too, right? It gives accountability to your operators that today just fundamentally doesn't exist. And again, it's all sorts of technologies that are out there from a safety perspective. It empowers your supervisors to be better, and it gives accountability to the operators that today don't exist. One of the greatest stories that I have from our technology specifically is the fact that an operator there was an accident. It is caused by a process issue. Traditionally, we had a meeting with the supervisor. Traditionally said, hey, the ground for termination. We went out, did the investigation. The evidence didn't show what the operator was suggesting. And when they pulled the footage, they were actually able to see it wasn't his fault. It saved his job. And I tell you, when you save an operator's job because now you have the ability to show or see exactly what happened, that whole question around, oh, how do they feel about having a camera over their head? We have operators now that won't get on a piece of equipment without one track on. And that's the power of technology in your building when it's here, not just to be a gotcha tool. We all know accidents happen, but when you can come alongside your operators and say, hey, you need to change these handful of behaviors, and that'll help you from a goal perspective. I don't know how many customers have or companies out here have incentive-based programs for productivity, right? But when you can come alongside them and say, hey, we understand that this was a process issue. It's not a person issue. We can help you with that. We're going to change our processes, right? And technology today empowers you to do that. You just got to find the right tools and make sure that they're set up correctly. So now we get into leading indicators. And this is another scary thing. We talk about near misses all the time. I've heard it a number of times out here today. A number of the other companies in here are talking about near misses, right? And that's where this becomes a game changer. Technology can really fundamentally change the process for you. When you can see those types of near misses, now you can coach on them. We play this again. We could coach this operator and say, hey, you took your hands off the control. And when you put your hand back on the control, you almost corrected into a pole. You didn't pay attention to what you were doing. And those types of coaching opportunities, how many times do you see that, have the ability to coach on that? And fundamentally, it could change somebody's life, right? It could save their lives eventually one day. And I know that sounds very, very, big, or this is a big statement, but the reality of it is it's true, right? One tiny little simple behavior like that could change the outcome for an operator. And so that's why when we're talking about this with our customers, we're looking at it from these are the things these are the behaviors that our system is looking for that you need to be coaching your supervisor need to be coaching the operators on, excuse me. So these types of tools can be that are available out there to not just report when something happens, that's after the fact. But now you're getting proactive, right? We've fundamentally turned the corner. Now we're talking about things that we saw this as a near miss, didn't end up leading into an accident. So now you can actually talk about these types of leading indicators from a safety perspective. So not looking in the direction of travel. That's a huge one. It's the number one thing that we see with all of our customers at any given time. Operators out performing their duties. You know what? I only have to back up a little bit. I don't need to look, check what's behind me. We see accidents with pedestrians, certainly running into racks. All of these different types of things, they can be prevented. You just got to coach your operators so they understand, hey, these are the things we need to be looking for. These are the cues that we need to be identifying within within a video feed to help our operators be better. We've talked about cell phone usage. It's incredibly difficult. Hands off the controls the obstructed dashboard. Obstructed dashboard is an incredibly common cause for accidents. Saran wrap, maybe it's a loose scanner. They're moving quick. Your operators they're trying to hit their goals, right? So instead of reholstering that scanner properly, they just throw it on the dash. It's no big deal. I'm only moving 10 slots, 10 bays. In that amount of time, that controller can get wedged under the steering control, and we've seen it, right? We've worked with our customers to identify that specific activity, right? You need to reholster your equipment so that you're operating safely. I've talked to a lot of people about their AGVs and different things that are out in the automated space now, the autonomous vehicles, right? And how easily they can be fooled by a piece of debris on the ground. But the reality of it is that piece of debris is equally as dangerous, or can be, to an operator, right? You run over that piece of debris and it pops up and catch you in the leg. I've seen it happen. It's not great, right? So being able to understand, hey, these are the things that a supervisor now has the ability to coach on. And 9 times out of 10, when you bring it to the attention of your operators, they said, "Oh yeah, I get it. I need to be, I want to be safe too." And all of my counterparts, all of my, my fellow operators out there, we're all working together here. Safety inspections. Show of hands, how many safety inspections today with the organizations out here are still being done on a piece of paper? How difficult is it for you to manage that process, right? We've heard stories that, hey, we put one out at the beginning of the week, required to be done, and we're lucky if we get 3 back, right? And it's not a problem unless OSHA shows up, right? We've gotten away with it. It's no big deal. OSHA shows up, says, "Hey, we need your inspection reports." Oh, about that, right? So there's technology out there. Find it, use it, have your team use it, right? And all digitally stores, you can actually, there's technology out there that you can automate the process, that if a lift shows issue, it can be automated right to your maintenance team so they can get information and say, "Hey, this lift needs to be serviced." It's not not a complex or cumbersome lift either. It's very, very simple. 9 times out of 10, you can actually mirror the process they have in place today. So you you digitize your safety form, it goes right into that new piece of technology, and boom, your team's using it. They're off and running. They're not having to learn new questions. They're not having to learn new processes. It's just a simple digitization of it. And I can't tell you how often we hear from our customers that, hey, this has been an incredibly simple tool for our team to use. And one of our safety, actually, Matt Ireland, he's a member of Holman Logistics, who's an IWLA member. He said, "I actually challenged all of my safety directors last week, 2 weeks ago, where it was. I need all your OSHA checklists for the last 30 days. And like that, he had it, right? Because they can go into the system, they pull that information, and it's all available to them, right? But if you're not focused on it, if you're not thinking about it, it's so easily just, that's a process. You know what? We'll get to it tomorrow. So make safety data driven, right? When you're thinking about your process, when you're thinking about what's taking place in your warehouse, how often, or do you have a spot today where you can go and pull up and say, "Okay, I got issues with people backing into racks, and I have a lot of forklift on forklift accidents. Maybe there's a problem with the process here in the facility." How many of you are able to say your team was wearing all their PPE today, right? Being able to understand the nuances of all of those things ultimately add up to a safer process, a safer building, right? And then when you think about it from a building, you can expand it to the network. And it brings consistency across the entire coaching process within the building, across shifts, across the network. And ultimately, that's what you all want as safety leaders for your organizations, is a safer place for your operators to come to work. You're able to understand the overall safety trends that are taking place in your building. Oftentimes, like I said, we see it. It's often process driven. Hey, we need to identify this because we're having a lot of accidents coming around the corner here, right? Maybe we need to adjust some of the product placement. And I know that might be easier said than done when you're running at 120, percent capacity, right? But it gives you the ability to understand and make decisions. Again, if you can measure it, then you can manage to it. So talking about Ringkim is a hazardous chemical company. They're an IWLA member, and they're very vocal about what they've seen utilizing our technology, but also other technology that they have in place from a safety perspective, right? And some of this data is one track centric, but others are actually being pulled from other safety systems that they're using as well, right? So having a camera system in place that can help you to fight a workers' comp claim or validate a workers' comp claim, right? You want to make sure that, hey, if there was an unsafe practice, we'll take care of it. But you want to be able to see it and validate that that's actually what occurred. And so these are just some of the savings that our customers are seeing. The 93% overall reduction in safety incidents is nothing short of incredible, right? I recognize that. That is a team that was hyper focused on the coaching discussions. Because I'll be the first one to tell you, you could put an awesome piece of technology in your building. If your team doesn't use it, it doesn't work, right? Nothing's going to change. But if you bring it in, you teach your team how to use it, they spend time working with your operators, that's when you see that shift. And we've walked into buildings very early on where we had a field service member of ours call and say, "Hey, I don't feel safe doing the install here." What do you mean? There's guys whizzing around, they're not looking where they're going. One guy's vaping while he's driving, right? 2 years later, he goes back, he says it's one of the safest warehouses ever been. And that's the change that good technology should deliver to you. Not that it can deliver, it should deliver that. That should be your expectation as you're talking to any of the vendor partners that are here today, is that, hey, you need something that will change your processes. And that's what we're talking about today with this type of technology. So now that you can see everything that's taking place in your warehouse, what are you going to achieve? One shameless plug for IWLA and our webinar that's coming up. uh, the QR code here, you can actually scan that and join Inland Stars, an IWLA member. They're going to share their experience with OneTrack. So I'll leave this up for now, but I wanted to spend time. I sat with a handful of people here at lunch, and we talked a lot about the discussion at the beginning of the day, right? It's a topic to not take lightly. I frankly, I'm not, I think the sentiment was maybe it scared some people, like, oh, what is this going to do? Is it going to take over the world? I don't know, robots, these types of things. So I want to open it up. Happy to talk about any safety questions, but I'm also happy to talk about any of the AI questions as it relates to what we're doing. So anybody have questions for me? Yes, sir. It's a great question. Initially, yeah, they're a little skeptical. But when you start to see those operators that are not losing their jobs because something happens, it doesn't take long. I it's we the organized labor is a we've worked with dozens of them. Some of them have nuanced requests. Hey, we want the cell phone piece turned off. okay, right? As long as it's fine with the customer, that's okay. You can do that. But the reality of it is if you come at it from a place of we're doing this to make sure your team goes home in the same condition they came to work in, that's the difference. You can't hardly argue that position, right? It's a very I don't know from a labor perspective if you want to be the union that said, hey, no, we're not investing in new safety stuff, right? It's probably not a great look. Other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, so our device specifically is it's mounted on the overhead guard. You might actually be able to see it in that picture. I don't know if this is it. It's right up in this area. But it's a small device. It's really, I mean, no bigger than your cell phone, roughly. It mounts all that's required is power for our particular device. Um, it's very easy to mount, deploys in an hour, depending upon the piece of equipment. So yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think what you're referring to is the when it identifies something, there'll be a bounding box right around, hey, this was your cell phone or something. But from an AI perspective, it's important because we're not doing any facial recognition, we're not doing any biometric capture. That's a very slippery slope as you're looking at technology. Just be mindful of that. But from a one track perspective, we're focused, we use computer vision technology, right? So we're focused on the different behaviors of the body as you're moving on a piece of equipment, right? So hard jerk, you're gonna, the body, the head jerks forward. There's different cues that we have trained the AI to look for that will help determine, hey, was this a impact? Was this a unsafe dock plate? Was this a bump? Was this a piece of debris on the ground? Was this a uh, a collision with racking? Right? So all of those different things are things that we're queuing on. How it does it is through tons and tons of data. Right? We've collected a number of terabytes of data. I think we're yeah, a lot of data, lots of money. Webinar is two no next week. Yeah, the 19th, I believe. Yep. Yeah, so that's interesting. I think from an unsafe conditions perspective, I would say no. Our technology is not monitoring the environment per se from a conditions perspective. Um, so, and I think you probably have to use more of that security camera type product that'll see more of the surrounding environment. But as it relates to some of those nuanced behaviors in a changed condition, right? That's where our system specifically might be able to do some things for you. So not multiple views from one camera, but we are mounting our particular devices in a number of different locations, right? So forward-facing cameras. This one actually has. So we're talking about safety today. There's a whole suite of productivity and quality tools as well, but around forward-facing cameras for load verification, we have dock door cameras for again load verification and quality. We have stationary cameras that you can mount in your ceiling to understand how much of your dock space is actually being utilized, right? So think about it. Hey, we hit 60% full on our dock. We need to reallocate resources because we got five trucks sitting out there that we need to get unloaded, right? So that's how we're using some of the AI to generate notifications. Everything too, I think, is important as you're thinking about technology. Is you shouldn't have to go hunting for it, right? When you talk about your supervisors having a million different tasks, right, in a given day, how can you help them be better at their job, more efficient at their job, right? And it all comes down to let's feed them the information they need to be looking for, right? Automate that through tasks and through policy notifications, right? So, hey, if you need to be checking these three reports every day, let's make sure there's a process to that. right? And that helps them to be ultimately a better supervisor for you as well. Thank you, Jay. Any other questions? Antoine, my man. Thank you. I'll pay you later. What other questions? I'm sorry. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you can actually, through that policy notification, hey, if this type of event requires a specific corrective action, it's built into the system, right? So now you're able to track and make sure that, again, those supervisors are coaching specifically to what you want them to coach to, or the responses that you want them to coach to. Something else around the AI topic, right? As I'm thinking about other questions that we've been asked, and specifically around AI, I think it came up in a couple of the discussions we had at the tabletop, but think about it less around, hey, my team probably isn't as technology as savvy as they need to be to use AI. AI is a really cool buzzword right now, right? If you find the right solutions, you don't have to worry about it. It actually doesn't matter if AI is involved or not, right? So often we hear, well, how can our team use this? Well, they don't have to worry about it. We're not asking them to write code or, train algorithms or anything. That's what you got us for. We'll take care of it, right? But the solution that you find or you want to try to use should just seamlessly integrate into your processes, right? Sure, there's going to be a little bit of change management required, but if you find that solution that can help you, AI is an afterthought. It's more about, hey, what's the value that this tool can bring to me, right? In terms of reporting, in terms of vision to your operations, in terms of being able to see things that are taking place. AI is just a cool buzzword, and frankly, that's what I work with sales and marketing teams from other companies. They use it to attract new customers. Hey, we're cutting edge. We're using AI technology for safety and productivity and quality, right? But they don't have to be experts in it. Any other questions? No, we have not experienced any legal issues. We are very, very deliberate in the process that we have when it comes to bringing on a new customer. Because if the first time your operators hear about specifically our system coming into place is when our field service team shows up to install them, might have a little bit of an issue. But we come alongside and say, hey, here's documentation. Here's example policies that other customers have used, right? We want to make sure that this is a great experience, not only for your operators, right? There's going to be apprehension at first, but let's make sure that they understand what the system does and more importantly, what the system doesn't do. No facial recognition. We're not capturing audio. We're not listening into your conversations. So short answer is no. We have not had any legal issues, but I think it all the response from your operators is all on how you bring the system into them and, you know, as much as you can make them a part of the process, right? Understand that they're not going to have the final say, but share with them what's going on, what this system is going to do for you. Absolutely. Any other questions? Ooh, 10 minutes early. Perfect. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.